Well, hello everyone. This is Teresa Callahan, and I am coming to you from my world headquarters here in Seattle, Washington. And I recently reconnected with someone who used to be a neighbor of mine and a friend. We had lost touch for several years, and over coffee discovered that we had a lot of common language around the psychology of people, chronic anxiety, anxiety in the workplace. Janet is actually a CPA of 20 years. She's worked as a controller and a CFO within organizations, working with people. And she shifted a few years back to getting her master's in psychology. And she coaches, mentors, and provides a practice in supporting business owners and relationships. She works with family dynamics and other group relationships. And so this relationship stuff and the people stuff is what I focus on in all of my work. We can typically figure out the business stuff, but it's the people stuff that keeps us up at night. Where Janet and I both sort of lit up was this conversation around people and the anxiety that can happen in the workplace. I coach so many small business owners throughout the country who manage teams, and it's the people stuff that really is their greatest challenge. And when you're a sales organization, especially, which a lot of my clients are, chronic anxiety can sort of seep up. And so we started talking about the dynamics of leadership. We talked a little bit about resilient leadership, and I really wanted to peel back all the layers to find out what Janet has been doing with her clients, and if she could share some of it with me. And I want to share this with my clients because I think this is really important stuff. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be these perfect leaders and have it all figured out when, frankly, we're just fumbling through it some of the days. And so, Janet, hi. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Hi, Teresa. Thanks for doing this. This is great. I have actually been, as we were neighbors, I've admired your career and watched it grow as you publish a book and speak at all these organizations. So I'm happy to do this.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting to know that when you come from an organization, what you're drawn to so much is the curiosity of people and why they do the things that we do. It's very complex because we're dealing with human beings. And I think we have a mutual fascination about why people do the things that they do. And so when this conversation of anxiety came up, Janet said something to me that just kind of blew my mind. And it did again today when we were talking earlier. But you said, chronic anxiety in the workplace is really common, and it's not always such a bad thing. So talk to me about that, Janet. Like, where did that comment come from, and what do you mean by that anxiety in the workplace isn't such a bad thing?
It's not such a bad thing. It's actually, I read that that if you find an organization that doesn't have anxiety, then it's probably destined to fail, because anxiety is actually part of what we live with every day, with working with the goals and the struggles that we do to make a profit, to meet our targets, to do all these things, learn new skills. These all are anxiety producing. So if you take away the anxiety, you kind of stop growing, which we don't really want to stop growing.
Yeah. So what's the difference between anxiety and strain and stress in the workplace and maybe positive anxiety, or something that's going to compel us or move us forward? How do we know the difference between the two?
A certain we've all got this in organizations. We've got this chronic low-level anxiety that we all deal with to some degree. And it actually, in some ways, drives us forward, drives us to grow. And that's what I was just talking about, in that setting a goal and striving toward it, it creates anxiety. Are we going to make it? Are we going to get there? And I've also read that, no growth actually happens in a comfort zone. So outside that comfort zone is where that anxiety is produced. So what we need to kind of pay more attention to is the reactive behaviors that we all kind of learn in our lives to respond to anxiety. And sometimes those reactive behaviors interact with our team members' reactive behaviors to be turn into dysfunctional patterns that don't work very well in our teams.
Yeah, and so as a Colby certified consultant, one of the things that I do, which is a simple way to help determine do we have the right person in the right job, is assess their talent and see if maybe we need to rebalance the team talent. Do we have the right person in the wrong job? I mean, 9 times out of 10, when I see someone leave an organization, it's because we had the right person in the wrong job. But also in our organization, especially sales organizations, there's a high pressure to perform. There's a high pressure to produce results. And if I'm the business owner and I have a certain methodology or a way to do it, I'm kind of going to expect you to do it my way, right? Because I'm the boss and this is what worked for me. Why don't you try it my way? Well, we're different people and we all approach things in a very different way. So in that respect, we can help people sometimes determine if it's a talent thing or is there misappropriated talent. But what are other things that we do as leaders, perhaps, that create anxiety that we need to be aware of and maybe learn to manage ourselves?
Well, let's see. What we're talking about now is a rational system. And that rational system is our skills and abilities. And like you say, analyzes, make sure we have the right people in the right jobs. But right below the surface, that oftentimes under our awareness, is an emotional system that is active and reactive within the organization. And we participate in that emotional system. And as leaders, we participate probably at a higher level and we drive it a little bit more. So that also gives us the opportunity to calm it a little bit more than other people in the organization. So as leaders, we can become aware of this emotional system and figure out our own reactive behaviors.
Yeah, well, it all starts right here, right? So I wrote a blog recently and it was like, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? That old saying. And I feel like as a business owner, a small team, when you walk in the door, the energy you bring absolutely impacts everybody on the team. I mean, if you're in a shitty mood, the team's going to be in a shitty mood. If you're in a great mood and things are going well, it's fascinating to me to watch that energy and how that carries over.
Yeah.
So there's ownership that we have to take. What's the awareness that I need to have when I walk in the door to my business with my people? What do I want to be watching for in terms of, is there anxiety? How do I help these people? And what's really going on underneath the surface?
Yeah, being able to see what's going on underneath the surface is our own just paying attention to that aspect of our organization, rather than what we're really taught most of the time to pay attention is all that rational stuff, the skills and abilities, and that's important. But that emotional system and understanding that when we react maybe what we do is we point out the problem person, or maybe we point out maybe we get defensive as a leader. Those are the things that we would do to create more anxiety. And so sometimes it's just a matter of taking a moment when we feel that little gut reaction and then reacting intentionally and reacting more with thought rather than, responding with thought more than reaction.
Yeah, which is so hard to do.
And
it's so
not easy. This is
And so how is it possible that one person on a team can completely impact and affect everyone in the organization and elevate that anxiety in a negative way? How does that spread, and what do we do about it?
Absolutely. Well, one of the ways that I kind of look at this is a watch, an old watch where you take the back off and you can see all of the gears and all of the springs and everything is ticking away at 1 second at a time. But if you take one of even the smallest gears and speed it up just a little bit, you're speeding up the entire system. And if you look at your organization as that kind of system, you can also slow it down and calm a whole system. But yes, an individual can affect an entire system to increase the anxiety. But the opposite is true. It can also, one person can really calm an entire team to reduce the anxiety and reduce those reactive and dysfunctional behaviors.
Yeah. How would you do that? Like if I walk into my work environment and I notice people are cranky, people are on edge, they're feeling under the gun. I mean, we're a sales organization, so every single day, sometimes we're racing and chasing and we're trying to accomplish and achieve, and it can wear on you when day after day, you're not feeling like you're hitting your target. We get really caught up in results. And it's important, of course, because we need to see those results. But again, we're human beings, and this is our one precious life. And as leaders, I believe that our most important responsibility is the well-being and the development of our people. So what could I do if I walk into the environment and I can feel it? Like you can slice a knife through the air and feel it. What are some steps that I could take to manage that?
Yeah, well, so first of all, you walk into this room and you can feel it. And you can feel the tension in the air. Everybody's like frustrated or a little bit on edge. And then the first step is to say, okay, what's going on with me? What do I feel in response to all that? And then what do you normally do in response to that? Maybe you normally say, okay, and you talk with a loud voice and you kind of are a little anxious in your response. But what if you slowed down and said, okay, my anxiety is up. Let's just take a breath. And maybe you even tell the whole team, let's take a breath. And you do things to calm the system before you get on track with what's going wrong, what do we need to do different, and those things that need to be done. But if you start with a calming behavior first and get everybody kind of calmed down from this anxiety, then what you guys do and collaborate, your creativity will go really high when the anxiety goes lower.
Yeah. I get calm listening to you say that. I feel like whether we're at home or we're at work, I mean, as a mom, I have those days when, the feet at the floor and it's like, oh gosh, there's so much to accomplish today, right? Not just my business, but my family. And we bring it. I know I influence my children, my attitude. And so when they're wound up, if I'm reactive to their wound up and I add to the wound upness, I mean, it's just like a perfect storm, right? And so it happens in the workplace too, doesn't it?
It does. And it's interesting that I have the same, my kids are not living in the house anymore, which is good, but I have so many things on my plate. And what I really need to do is take 30 minutes and go for a walk. And I would get so much more done if I did that rather than just jump into my to-do list.
Yeah.
So having those moments of calm and peace is going to help the whole system.
Yes. I love this. Okay, so one of the issues, I'll use the word issue, that I see some of my clients challenged with is that they'll have someone on the team who is a high performer and trying to carry everybody's load and do it all, and they're really moving in the right direction. But then they get a little cranky because they're the only ones carrying the load and it's all falling on them. And then we get into this conversation around the high producers and the non-producers, or the people who are achieving and the people who are non-achieving. And I will see my clients scratching their heads, staying up late at night, trying to figure out what's going on with the system. We've assessed the talent. We think we have the right person in the right job. Is there an attitude issue? Is there a cognitive problem? Are they just not learning the stuff? And sometimes I believe it is this emotional intelligence and this emotional connection to the work. And people get really, really stuck. And so rather than staying in this conversation around who's doing everything and who's doing nothing, and that big gap between the two. How do you take someone who's a high performer who can cause anxiety actually and make it be a positive thing?
Right. Yeah. This is a real common reactive behavior, reactive pattern in a workplace. And it's what I call it is over-functioning, under-functioning. And you usually don't find it one without the other. So you find an over-functioner like this high performer, and then you find usually an under-functioner near them. And it's pretty common. And a lot of times we let go of the under-functioner because they're not doing their job or they're not doing enough. But what happens is then there's a new under-functioner to match up with this over-functioner. And so the pattern doesn't go away.
Yes.
What we need to do is kind of look at what this emotional system is going on with this team and help the over-functioner realize that they have to do that counterintuitive thing, which we as moms, we have been faced with this so many times, is that if your kid's not doing enough and you're doing too much, you actually have to step back and do less so that they step up. And that's what we do have to do in our teams too. So this overfunctioner, this high performer doesn't have to sell less or perform less, but kind of stay within his boundaries a little bit better rather than doing other people's jobs as well.
Yeah.
Ends up.
Well, and how do you do that? I mean, when I listen to you say that, I think of the leadership dimension of our team members. And I actually have been brought into many organizations to develop a team leader. I have several I'm working with right now where they're not the business owner, but they're the leader on the team, and they're going through my leadership program. And my responsibility is to tap into their resource and help them be better leaders and better at inspiring the others on their team to help bring them along. It doesn't come naturally for a lot of us. So how could I, as a leader, like what would I be watching for as a business owner? And how would I tap into that leader to get them to share and maybe engage others on the team at a higher level? I mean, we don't want to stop them or pull them back because they're performing well and we need the high performers. But how do we kind of spread the love and help that person really take on a leadership role with others on the team?
Well, the leadership role has a lot of skills that are different than the high performing role, right? And you're teaching we as leaders and you with your clients are teaching these high performers how to be leaders. Well, in that teaching, you also want to teach them how to be aware of this emotional system that we're talking about. So when they're over functioning and getting frustrated and maybe resentful, then we as owners can help these high performers kind of step back and pay attention to when they overfunction, who underfunctions, and what is their impact on a team. And you can actually do trial and error. It actually happens pretty quickly where you step back and you see the underfunctioner step up. So coaching our overfunctioners to step back a little bit helps them.
Yeah, bring others along. Well, and when they're busy and they're pulled away from their desk and they have their own targets that they need to hit, sometimes it can feel like you're asking a lot of your people to do that. But if we're part of a team, what I hear you speaking to is the high-performing teams and the dysfunction of a team. When you have someone like that who's sort of in an isolated place and they're not helping the good of the whole team. That I guess what I heard you say is you would call that dysfunction.
I would call, this dysfunctional behavior, because you get rid of these underperformers that you blame, and that overfunctioner blames. They're not doing their job. You get rid of them, and then there's another one.
Yeah. So
the pattern continues, whether based on this reactive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm meeting my targets, I'm going to do more and more and more, and I'm going to do the jobs as well.
Yeah. So if you're going to be a high performer, part of that responsibility on a team is to share what you're learning and to help bring the team forward in your striving.
And it comes back down to also what we're measuring. Are we measuring individual performance too much? Are we measuring, do we need to measure team performance?
Yes. Ugh. Yeah, because you can almost create that. It almost can manifest itself, right? If you have a whole bunch of individual performers on a team, that's fine if that's okay and that's the desire and the goal. But if there's one strategy plan, there's one target, there's one scorecard, that we're all striving to achieve at the end of the year, that to me, it puts even more emphasis on the fact that we need to balance and carry that load and more intentionally and more strategically.
Well, and figure out how the team can achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask you about, Janet, you've mentioned resilient leader. I know you've read a lot, you've read this stuff, you've researched this stuff, and there's thought leaders and they use this language around resilient leadership. What does that mean, and how can we become resilient leaders? How can we get there?
Well, resiliency is being able to recover from negative conditions, not reaching our goals or even difficult clients, but recover gracefully and be able to continue to stay focused on our goals and the direction that we're going, even when things are coming at us. So being a resilient leader means that we stay on track with these things, and as things are coming at us, be able to calmly and gracefully continue to move forward intentionally. So also being able to notice what's going on with the emotional system in our organization and in ourselves. In ourselves is even more key.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if we were to sum it up and say these are the 3 things that you need to do to become a resilient leader, what would those 3 things be?
Well, first of all, I think you need to be aware of this emotional system that's going on in your organization. Not that it's all bad, but be able to manage it when it gets a little bit dysfunctional. The other is to really pay attention and notice what you do as a reactive behaviors into your own anxiety, and how you can calm the system, or whether you're actually adding to the anxiety of the system. And the third is to help your team members all kind of be able to talk in this kind of language to each other and say, okay, I'm getting a little anxious about this. Let's calm down just for a bit.
Yeah, well, and when you use the word grace, I've said this to you before, it just has such a calming effect. There's such an acceptance. I think we're so hard on ourselves in this role as a leader, and we have to portray as if we got it all figured out and that we have it all under control. And most of us are so far from that every single day. It's this, again, staying up late. I've seen people physiologically break down, like they get sick because of the worry and the strain and the stress that we put on ourselves. And I believe sometimes we put on our teams. And it's such a huge shift in perspective for me when you said, oh, well, chronic anxiety in the workplace, of course it's there. And it's not always such a bad thing. I mean, it really completely shifted the way I think about anxiety in the workplace. And I believe it's something that we think about a lot as business owners when we have employees. And somehow we're conditioned. Maybe it's the culture we come from in our families. Maybe it's what we've learned growing up, that if there's stress or anxiety, we become avoidance. And so we just don't go there. And I know in your work as a psychologist and getting your master's degree in psychology, there's a lot about this avoidant behavior. It can show up in all kinds of relationships, but it's really dysfunctional when you're the leader of your team, isn't it?
Yes, we do avoidant behavior, but we rarely are able to avoid these things. I mean, if they're going to happen, they're going to pop up in different ways, and
yeah,
we're not going to be prepared for how they pop up.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Well,
you might get sick. I mean,
mhm.
that's a avoidant behavior happening a lot, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I love this conversation, Janet. You and I could spend all day talking about this stuff, and I look forward to introducing you to my Leadership Circle study group. I look forward to introducing you to my clients. I know you've got a big speaking event at the end of the month, speaking to business leaders about anxiety in the workplace and how to really lean into it and embrace it and be curious about it. I loved your analogy about the watch and taking off the back part, and is there one little part can make such a big adjustment to the whole system. And
Yep.
so I thank you for your time today, and I know my clients are going to love meeting you and love this message. So if anybody wants to reach out, it's Janet Moczulewski, and her business is jm-therapy.com. And Janet, I'm going to put your contact information as well on my site. So if people want to reach out to you directly, they sure can, for any kind of support in their family system or in their work system.
Thank you, Teresa. This was really fun.
It was fun. Okay, everybody, have a great day, and talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.